I was an idiot, a complete and utter fool. And the worst part? She knew it. She counted on it. It started with a lie so small, I almost let it go. Emily said she had a work dinner, nothing fancy, just a quick bite with colleagues. Fine. No problem. But then a buddy of mine, Eric, sent me a photo from a bar across town. A casual shot of his drink, no context, no message. In the background, Emily was laughing, leaning in close to some guy I had never seen before. I stared at the picture for a long time. At first, I told myself it was innocent. Maybe just a coworker, maybe a funny story being shared. But something about the way she was looking at him, the way her body angled toward his, made my stomach twist in a way I couldn't ignore. When she got home that night, she smelled like whiskey and expensive cologne, neither of which were hers. I played it cool, asked how dinner was. She gave me a quick, practiced answer. The food was okay, the meeting was dull, nothing interesting happened. I had proof, but I didn't say anything, not yet. Instead, I started watching the little things, details I had always ignored. How she suddenly started taking extra care in how she looked before going to work. How she started putting her phone face down, silencing notifications, and stepping outside for fresh air when she got a call. And then, there was the shift in attitude, small, almost imperceptible at first. She became more impatient with me, rolling her eyes at things she used to laugh at. Her kisses were mechanical, her touch fleeting. And then the final nail in the coffin, Emily had been distant for weeks. I had my suspicions, but no hard proof. So, I did something I never thought I would do. I checked our shared phone bill. It took me less than 2 minutes to find the number she had been calling and texting more than anyone else. More than me. Brandon. I stared at the name until it blurred. Then, without hesitation, I called it. A man's voice answered, casual, relaxed. Hey babe, what's up? My stomach turned to stone. Silence. Then, he spoke again, more cautious this time. Emily? I hung up. I sat in our quiet house, in our living room filled with memories, feeling like the walls were closing in on me. The weight of it all, the betrayal, the deception, was suffocating. But I wasn't going to confront her yet. No. I wanted to see how far she would take this. So, I played along. I kissed her goodnight. I told her I loved her. I watched as she lied to my face with a smile. And then the next day, I followed her. I had never followed anyone in my life. It felt ridiculous, like something out of a bad movie. But I needed the truth, and Emily, she wasn't going to give it to me willingly. She left the house at 7:45 a.m., just like always, coffee in hand, dressed for work. Except she wasn't wearing what she normally wore to the office. She was in a short, tight dress, the kind she used to wear when we went on dates back when she actually cared. That was the first red flag. I waited 5 minutes before heading out, kept my distance. Her car didn't go to work. She drove straight to a hotel on the other side of town. I parked down the street, heart pounding, palms sweating. She pulled into the lot, found a spot near the entrance, and got out. I barely recognized her. The way she moved, confident, excited, wasn't how she walked into our house every night. She checked her reflection in the car window, fluffed her hair, and then walked inside without a second of hesitation. She had done this before. I clenched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. For a few minutes, I just sat there. My mind screamed at me to storm in after her, to catch her in the act. But I forced myself to wait. I needed undeniable proof. So I waited. 30 minutes. An hour. An hour and a half. Then, a car pulled up a few spaces away, a sleek black BMW with tinted windows. The door opened, and out stepped Brandon. I knew it was him. He looked exactly like the kind of guy who would steal someone's wife. Tall, sharp-dressed, the kind of effortless arrogance that made my skin crawl. He adjusted his cuffs, checked his watch, and then walked into the hotel like he owned the place. I gripped my phone. This was it, the moment where my marriage truly ended. I wasn't stupid enough to charge him like some lunatic. Instead, I took a picture of his car, his license plate. Then, I got out of mine and walked into the hotel, my heart hammering so hard I thought I might pass out. The receptionist barely looked up as I approached. I forced a casual smile. "Hey, my buddy Brandon just checked in. Forgot to grab his room number. Mind helping me out?" The woman barely hesitated. "Brandon Whitmore, room 214. I turned away before she could ask any questions. My hands were shaking, my breath unsteady. I walked down the hall, every step bringing me closer to the moment I knew I couldn't take back. I stopped in front of the door. I heard laughter, her laughter. Soft, teasing, a sound I hadn't heard in months. And then muffled sounds, movement, the unmistakable rustling of sheets. My vision blurred with rage. I raised my fist, ready to pound on the door, to blow it all up in one explosive second. But then I heard something that made my blood run cold, Emily's voice, smug, taunting, unapologetic. "You'll put up with my infidelity for as long as I allow it." I froze. She was laughing as she said it, laughing. Little did she know, she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. I stood outside room 214, fists clenched, my breath coming in sharp, shallow bursts. I had come here looking for proof, and now I had something much worse, the truth. Emily wasn't just cheating. She was mocking me for it. "You'll put up with my infidelity for as long as I allow it." Her words rang in my ears, slicing through me like a blade. And the way she said it, arrogant, dripping with amusement, like I was some pathetic fool who would never dare to challenge her. She had no idea I was standing just feet away, that I had heard everything. I forced myself to take a step back, then another. My pulse roared in my ears, a war between pure rage and cold, calculating logic. If I barged in now, I'd get what? A screaming match? Her crocodile tears? More lies? No, that wasn't enough. I wanted ruin. I walked back down the hallway, past the front desk, out the door, and straight to my car. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, heart palm, mind racing. And then I smiled. Emma thought she was untouchable. She thought she had me wrapped around her finger. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. I spent the next few hours preparing. Every step had to be perfect. First, I made sure I had proof, the phone bill records, the messages, the photos. Then I called my lawyer. I didn't tell Emily I had spawned to one before, but after I saw that first text from Brandon, I started planning for this exact moment. "File the papers," I told him, "and freeze the accounts." That was step 1. Step 2, information warfare. I spent the next hour drafting a group text to everyone in our lives, her friends, her family, my family, even her boss. And I mingled detail, screenshots of her texts with Brandon, the call logs, the hotel check-in, and the piece de resistance, the exact words I had overheard her say. "You'll put up with my infidelity for as long as I allow it." I didn't send it. Not yet. Because step 3, that was the best part. Emily had always been careless with her passwords. I knew them all, her email, her social mev, her work login. I took my time, carefully setting up scheduled posts, one for Facebook, one for. At exactly 6 p.m., the truth would go public. By the time Emily got back home, she wouldn't just have to face me, she'd have to face everyone. And that was when I dropped the final bomb. I checked the time, 4:32 p.m. I leaned back in my seat, exhaled, and smiled. This wasn't just revenge, this was justice. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my pulse had settled. I wasn't panicked. I wasn't shaking with rage anymore. No, this was something else entirely, a calm, controlled storm brewing inside me. Everything was in place. The divorce papers were ready, the accounts were locked, the messages, the posts, scheduled to go live at 6 p.m. sharp. Emily had no idea her world was about to collapse. I walked into the house like it was just another evening, tossed my keys on the counter, poured myself a drink, sat down on the couch, and waited. 5:17 p.m. The front door opened. She strolled in, humming, purse swinging on her arm like she hadn't just spent the afternoon desecrating our marriage in a cheap hotel room. She didn't even look at me at first, just kicked off her heels and stretched like she was exhausted. Then, finally, she glanced my way. "Hey." That was it. No, just a casual "Hey," like she hadn't been in another man's bed just hours ago. I swirled the ice in my glass, watching her. "How was work?" She didn't even blink. "Long, stressful. You know how it is." Lies. So smooth. So effortless. I tilted my head, letting the silence stretch between us. She shifted, uncomfortable under my stare. "What?" she asked, laughing nervously. I smiled. "You tell me." She frowned, stepping closer. "Are you okay?" I stood up slowly, deliberately. "Yeah, actually, I feel great. Because, I learned something interesting today." Her expression barely changed, just a flicker of something in her eyes, annoyance, caution, but not guilt. No, Emily didn't do guilt. She sighed, exasperated. "Okay, what's this about?" I took a sip of my drink, savoring the moment. "Brandon Whitmore. That name ring a bell?" Boom. There it was. That tiny hesitation. A half-second delay before her face rearranged itself into feigned confusion. "Who?" she said, forcing a laugh. I chuckled, shaking my head. "Wow, you really are a piece of work." "Excuse me?" She put her hands on her hips, eyes narrowing. "What the hell is this? Some kind of interrogation?" I leaned in just enough to watch her flinch, then whispered the words that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "You'll put up with my infidelity for as long as I allow it." The blood drained from her face. There it was, fear. "What did you just say?" she stammered. I took out my phone, tapped the screen. 5:59 p.m. I grinned. "Check your phone, sweetheart." And then, right on cue. Bzzzzz. Her phone vibrated once, twice, again and again. Calls, messages, notifications flooding in. Her hands scrambled for it, fingers shaking as she unlocked the screen. And then she saw it, everything. The texts, the screenshots, the hotel records, the words she had so arrogantly thrown at her lover, now laid bare for the world to see, for her boss to see. Her breath itched, her lips parted, but no words came out, just a sharp, broken inhale, panic, and then screaming. "What did you do?" she shrieked, dropping the phone like it had burned her. "What the hell did you do?" I shrugged, finishing my drink. "Oh, just told the truth. Something you seem to have a real problem with." Her hands yanked at her hair. "You psycho! You ruined me!" I laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, Emily. You did that all by yourself." She lunged at me, face twisted in fury, but I stepped back, holding up a single manila envelope. "By the way," I added, tossing it onto the table, "you're being served." Her mouth opened, closed, lost for words. I turned, walking toward the door. And right before I stepped out, I glanced back one last time. She was still standing there, clutching her phone, staring at the divorce papers like they were a death sentence. And in a way, they were. 6:01 p.m. Let the world eat her alive. I didn't stay to watch her crumble. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I had already won the moment Emily saw those messages. The moment she realized she wasn't the puppet master anymore. That was enough. I stepped outside, breathing in the cool evening air, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, relief. But it wasn't over yet. My phone buzzed, a call from an unknown number. I smirked, already knowing who it was. I answered. A deep, smug voice filled the speaker. "Brandon." "Wow," he chuckled. "You really went nuclear, huh?" I stayed silent, let him talk. "You could have just walked away, man," he continued. "But instead, you made a spectacle. A little insecure, don't you think?" I exhaled through my nose. "Tell me, Brandon. You still at the hotel?" Pause. "What?" I checked my watch. "Because if you are, you might want to get moving. Emily's boss, The one I CC'd in that email. He really didn't like finding out his senior marketing director was screwing around on company time. Another pause. Then you're bluffing. I laughed. Am I? And right on cue, another phone buzzed, but this time, it wasn't mine. Brandon cursed under his breath. I didn't even have to see his face to know his world was starting to burn too. You absolute. I hung up. Let him drown in the mess he helped create. I drove for a while aimlessly, my heart still racing from the adrenaline. I knew Emily was losing it back at the house, probably screaming into the void, scrambling to put out fires she couldn't control. By now, the damage was spreading. Her friends had seen the messages, her coworkers, her parents. I wondered if she had called them yet, if she had tried to spin some ridiculous sob story. But there was nothing she could say to fix this. Not this time. Then my phone buzzed again, a text from an unexpected name, Emily's sister, Jessica. Jess, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she was doing this to you. Are you okay? I stared at the screen for a moment, surprised. Jessica and I had never been particularly close, but she wasn't like Emily. She actually had a conscience. I typed back. Me? I will be. Jess, she's losing her mind, calling everyone, trying to blame you, me. Let her. She won't recover from this. I paused, then finally typed. Me, that's the point. I put my phone down, eyes on the road. For the first time in months, I felt weightless. And Emily? She was sinking. I didn't have to wait long for the fallout. By the time I got to my buddy Eric's place, where I'd be crashing for a while, Emily had already spiraled into full-blown meltdown mode. Call after call, voicemail after voicemail. I didn't answer a single one. Then, the text started. Emily, what the hell did you do? Emily, you psycho. Emily just called me, crying. Emily, my boss fired me. Are you happy? That one was interesting. I smiled as I took a slow sip of my beer. See, here's the thing. Emily wasn't just cheating. She was doing it on company time at a hotel booked with her corporate credit card. And when I included her boss in that little email blast, well, turns out companies don't love when their employees commit fraud to fund their midday rendezvous. So yeah, she was unemployed now. I let her stew for another 30 minutes before finally answering one call. She picked up on the first ring. You ruined my life, she shrieked, voice raw. I took another sip. No, Emily, you did that. I just made sure everyone saw it. You had to know, right? I laughed. Actually laughed. I had every right. You spent months lying to my face, screwing some loser behind my back, and then you had the nerve to say I'd put up with it as long as you allowed it. Yeah, sweetheart, not so fun when you're the one getting humiliated, huh? Her breath hitched. She wasn't used to this. Me fighting back. You don't understand, she stammered, her voice suddenly shifting softer, the venom gone. We can fix this. I almost choked on my drink. Fix what exactly, Emily? Our marriage? I said, as if it was obvious. She was confused. Okay, it was just a phase. It didn't mean anything. You're my husband. We can move past this. Phase, I repeated, my grip tightening on my phone. Emily, you weren't confused. You were bragging about it, laughing about it. You made me a joke, and now that everyone knows, now that your life is falling apart, suddenly you want to fix things? Silence. I let it sit, let her squirm in the weight of her own actions. Then finally she whispered, Please. Pathetic. I exhaled, shaking my head. Emily, the divorce papers are on the table. Sign them. That's the only fix you're getting. Her breath hitched again. You don't mean that. Another silence. Then the mask dropped. You'll regret this. She spat, voice cold now, threatening. You think you won, but you haven't. You think people will take your side forever? They'll forget, and I'll rebuild. I always do. I chuckled. Go ahead, rebuild. Just not with me. And then, before she could spew more venom, I hung up. I sat there for a long moment, staring at my phone. Then I blocked her number. Emily wasn't the type to accept defeat, ever, so I wasn't surprised when the attack started. Blocked numbers, fake accounts, mutual friends suddenly reaching out on her behalf. She was desperate to regain control, scrambling to twist the story in her favor. But the best part? Nobody was buying it. See, when I exposed her, I didn't just drop a bomb, I burned the entire battlefield. There was no version of events where she came out clean. The screenshots, the hotel records, the mocking way she had bragged about her infidelity. It was all out there. But that didn't stop her from trying. First, she played the victim. Emily's Facebook post. I made a terrible mistake. I hurt someone I love, and now I'm being publicly shamed for it. No one deserves this level of cruelty. Please, if you ever cared about me, don't spread the hate. Broken heart. Oh, the performative sadness, the fake humility. She wanted people to see her as the poor, fragile woman being bullied by her vindictive ex. Except the comments? Brutal. Her cousin. You were cheating for months. That's not a mistake. That's a lifestyle. Old coworker. Girl, you got fired because you used the company card to pay for your little affairs. That's on you. Her best friend, ex-best friend now. I can't believe I defended you. You really laughed about it. Wow. It was beautiful. But Emily? She wasn't done. When playing the victim didn't work, she turned vicious. She started spreading lies about me. He was controlling. He was emotionally abusive. He was paranoid and crazy. That's why I cheated. I laughed when I saw it, actually laughed. Because guess what? Nobody believed her. My receipts were too airtight. Her own words had damned her. And worse, the people who once blindly supported her were now turning on her. Mutual friends started cutting ties. Her family humiliated her. Ex-best friend Jessica. We started talking. And Emily? She was alone. By the end of the week, she deleted her accounts. She thought she was untouchable. She thought she could cheat, lie, and mock me without consequences. But in the end, I didn't just leave her. I left her with nothing. Emily was backed into a corner, and a cornered animal lashes out. At first, it was the desperate, flailing kind of rage, wild accusations, crocodile tears, begging, bargaining, threats. But when that didn't work, when she realized no one was coming to save her, she tried one last pathetic move. She showed up at my door. I had barely settled into Eric's place when I heard the pounding. Bam! 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 I sighed, already knowing who it was. Took my time finishing my beer before opening the door, and there she stood. Emily, disheveled, mascara streaked, hair a mess. Not the untouchable, arrogant woman who had laughed at my pain. No, this was someone else entirely. This was a woman who had lost everything. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, wide, desperate. Please, she whispered. I just leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. For what? She swallowed hard, shifting on her feet. I messed up. I know that. But we can fix this. I laughed right in her face. Fix this? I repeated, shaking my head. Emily, you didn't just mess up. You treated me like garbage, threw away our marriage, bragged about it, and when I finally hit back, you tried to turn me into the bad guy. And now, after everyone's abandoned you, you want to fix it. Tears welled in her eyes. I was stupid. Brandon meant nothing. It was just excitement, okay. It was a mistake. I tilted my head. A mistake is one time, Emily. You made a choice. Over and over. And now you're just sorry you got caught. She reached out, gripping my shirt like some dramatic movie scene. I love you, she choked out. I don't want to lose you. I looked down at her hands, then back at her, and I smiled. Oh, Emily, I murmured. You lost me the second you laughed about it. Then gently, I pried her fingers off me, stepped back, and shut the door in her face. I heard her sob. Heard her fist hit the door once, twice, then silence. After a long moment, I exhaled, feeling lighter than I had in months. Because now she had to live with it. With the loneliness, the regret, the knowledge that she had gambled everything and lost. And me? I wasn't just free. I was finally alive. Days passed, then weeks. Silence at first. I expected Emily to keep fighting, to come at me with one last desperate move. But she didn't. Because there was nothing left for her to fight with. Her social life? Destroyed. Friends had cut ties, either out of disgust or because siding with her meant facing their own public humiliation. Her job? Gone. No company wanted to hire someone who had been fired for screwing around on the clock. Her family? Embarrassed. They weren't speaking to her, not because they were loyal to me, but because she had shamed them. And Brandon? Gone. Turns out, he didn't want her either. Once the scandal exploded, he vanished like a cockroach when the lights turn on. Emily had built her life on manipulation, control, and arrogance. But now, she was a ghost. I knew she was still lurking, though, watching, stalking my social media through fake accounts, probably hoping for some sign of weakness, some hint that I was struggling without her. Except I wasn't. I was thriving. I started hitting the gym, picking up old hobbies, living. And then came the final unexpected twist. One night I got a text from an unknown number. "I need to see you. Please." I stared at it for a long time. Didn't reply. A minute later, another text from the unknown number. "I'm at the park near your place. Just 5 minutes, that's all I ask." I already knew who it was. Against my better judgment, I grabbed my keys. One last conversation. She was sitting on a bench, looking nothing like the woman I once knew. Hollow-eyed, dressed in sweats, hair unkempt like she hadn't slept in days. I didn't sit, just crossed my arms, waiting. "What do you want?" She looked up at me, tears brimming. "I don't know who I am anymore." I raised an eyebrow. "That's not my problem." She flinched, her lip trembling. "I don't have anyone left." I sighed, rubbing a hand down my face. "Emily, I'm not your savior. You set fire to your life, and now you're standing in the ashes wondering why it's cold." She sniffled. "Do you ever think, if things had gone differently, we could have been happy?" I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "No, because the person I loved never existed." Her breath hitched. I saw the way that cut her deep, but I wasn't here to comfort her. I turned to leave, but she grabbed my arm, one last time. "Can we ever be friends?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and I smiled. "No." Then I walked away for good. I didn't look back, not when she whispered my name, not when her breath hitched in that tiny, broken way, not when I heard the quiet shuffle of her sinking back onto the bench, her world crumbling around her. I just walked because this was the end. Not just of our marriage, not just of the lies, the betrayal, the war she thought she could win. This was the end of Emily's power over me. For months she had played her games, controlled the board, moved the pieces exactly where she wanted them. And now, she had nothing left to play. I didn't feel sorry for her. I didn't feel anything for her, just relief. By the time I got back to my car, my phone buzzed, one last message. "Emily, I'll always love you." I stared at it for a moment, not because it meant anything, but because it meant nothing. I deleted the message, blocked the number, and just like that, Emily was gone. Life moved forward. It always does. The divorce was finalized. The house was sold. Every trace of our past wiped clean. I got my own place, a fresh start, a quiet, simple life, free from her toxicity, her manipulation, her presence. And man, it felt good. One day, Eric and I were grabbing drinks when he glanced up from his phone. "Dude, you won't believe this," he said, turning the screen toward me. It was a Facebook post. Emily. She had reactivated her account, rebranded herself, a new name, a new city, a new narrative. "We all go through dark times, but I've learned, grown, and healed. Ready for my next chapter. Sparkling heart." I snorted. Classic Emily. She had lost. She had burned every bridge, destroyed every relationship. But instead of truly facing it, she had done the only thing she knew how, rewritten the story. But the best part? It didn't matter. Not to me, not to anyone who knew the truth. She was just another stranger now. Eric smirked. Bet she still stalks your profile. I took a sip of my drink, smirking back. Let her. Because the best revenge was living a life she could never be part of.